you know?
Okay, in 2006, the water level in Lake Ponset was, and this is an approximate off the graph, about 1646.4 feet above sea level.
And approximately, in layman's terms, when you people say, how low was the lake, how low did the lake get, how far down is it now, what would that be?
That is, I'm going to count them so I get it correct. 1, 2, 3. That's about 4 to 5 feet below the bottom of the outlet or the sill.
Okay. And if you add another foot to the ordinary high water mark, you're pushing 6 feet low.
That is correct.
All right. Now, so the board understands also, we had an unusual year this year because of the temperatures. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did we have an unusual year as far as the amount of precipitation? Was there more or less or about the same?
This year I actually haven't looked at the records, but I can't answer that. I think it's higher, but I can't answer.
Okay. Now, if we were to look at what the future may bring, and I want you to see some things as an expert you can do, and so do. Beginning next year, and for the next 5 years or 6 years, we had regular South Dakota summers for temperature. We had normal South Dakota precipitation in eastern South Dakota, and we had normal wind velocities for South Dakota. Assuming all those to be true, what do you believe would happen to Lake Ponset again over the next 5 to 7 year period?
The lake will decline approximately 1 foot per year. So if we would have normal conditions for the next 5 to 7 years, I would expect to see the lake level drop 5 to 7 feet.
This gate was installed in 1991. Now we're talking about the outlet, the inlet gate there. And in the 1990s, described, and you described them as quite what years, correct?
Climatologically, they were unique in that we had slightly above precipitation and reduced evaporation. So that's sort of that combination.
Are you aware, and other witnesses will so testify, that there was flooding the last time on Lake Ponset in 2001?
Yes, that is the peak right here that you see on exhibit number 4.
And when was the Boswell Dam rendered inoperable?
Boswell Dam was rendered inoperable in 2002.
Now, there's been a lot of, this is my final point. I try to be, because I understand the time issue here. We talk a lot about nutrient loading, and I know the Department of Water and Natural Resources talks a lot about nutrient loading. And I know Game Fish and Parks talks a lot about nutrient loading. And I know Council, on our direct examination, refer to the term nutrient loading. You understand where I'm at? You understand what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Now, as part of the submissions, and with this would be in the report submitted by you, Dr. Burkhardt, is that correct?
That is correct.
There is a revised report on the application, and this has been referred to as the Winterton report. I don't know if the board has that. It's in our application, our submission by our experts, the revised report dated November 5th, 1986. It's a 2-page document signed by James Winterton, the Natural Resources Engineer. Pages 40 and 41. Now, I noticed the date on that report. You see it says November 5th, 1986.
That's correct.
And in the second paragraph of this report, you refer to the term, see the term at the end of that paragraph, nutrient loading?
Yes, I do.
And on the second page of the report, Mr. Winterton states that the application for a flood control permit can be approved with the following qualifications. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Is there any reference in there to nutrient loading in 1 or 2?
I do not see any reference to nutrient loading in either 1 or 2.
Okay. Now that document is November 5th, 1986. Do you see the revised recommendation of the Chief Engineer for revised flood control permit signed by John Hatch the next day, November 6th,
Yes, I do.
1986. You have that?
Yes, I have in front of me.
And have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, I have.
Do you see any reference in Mr. Hatch's recommendation as to nutrient loading?
I see no reference to nutrient loading in that document.
Okay. Now, then there was a hearing held before the predecessors on this board, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the hearing was held on flood control permit, on the flood control permit, is that correct?
That is correct.
And as is the practice of this board, the board issues findings of fact, conclusions of law, and a final decision, don't they?
That's my understanding.
And if the board would kindly turn to pages 44 to 47. Are you with me, Mr. Emmons?
Yes, I am.
I'd like you, and I know the board hasn't had a chance to go through this line by line. I'm assuming you've had the chance to review this line by line throughout the noon time
Yes, I did.
at my request.
Yes.
Now, this board, this document we're looking at was signed, and it's a record of this board, by Marion Gunderson. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you know who Marion Gunderson was?
Actually, I don't.
We assume she was chairperson of the board, or...
That would be my assumption, but I don't know that as a fact.
Now, the document findings of fact and conclusions of law is representative of the board's decision. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Do you see anything in any of these documents, any of these pages, that references nutrient loading?
As I look through it, I do not see the words nutrient loading contained in the finding of fact.
Okay. So, the board didn't mention nutrient loading, did they?
No.
Then if you would, the next document, now, before I get to the next document, on the findings of fact, you saw the date, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
The date of the decision by the board, or at least of the findings, conclusions, it says March 11th, 1987. Do you see that?
That's correct.
Now, if you would turn to flood control permit number FC5.
I have it in front of me.
The board should have flood control, pardon?
43.
Page 43. I noticed in this flood control permit, not issued by the board, but signed by Chief Engineer, in the second paragraph, the term nutrient loading suddenly appears. You see that?
I see that.
Now, what's the date of the approval on the left-hand side toward the lower part? What does it say?
The approval date is April 30th, 1987.
Okay, but before that,
Oh,
You
I'm
see-
sorry. Approved March 4th, 1987.
is that the same, is that a different date than when this board entered its findings of fact, conclusions of law, and a decision?
It should be the same date.
But they're different, aren't they?
Yes.
And now, suddenly nutrient loading shows up when the Department of Water and Natural Resources issues a permit, correct?
That's correct.
And then finally, flood control water license number SC5, page 48 for the board, again, issued by the Water Rights Program, not signed by this board, the term nutrient loading shows up. Is that correct?
Are you referring to the 96?
Yes, October.
Okay, yes. Yes, it does show up.
So as far as you can tell, did this board, and the predecessors of this board, ever indicate anything about nutrient loading in the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the decision that they rendered?
There is no statement about nutrients.
All the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.